Today I have another video for you. This one is on Wild Raikka. So Wilds are one of the new archetypes that were released in the new expansion, and they are really strong, even though people are kind of saying they're not that good. I'm going to show you a deck that actually makes them really strong. So, okay, let's just jump into the games actually, because, yeah, that's going to be better. So, yeah, I'll just show off one game where this really popped off. We just kind of got on a roll and just really did our thing. So this deck focuses on basically using Portal or just swarming your opponent with so many allies they just can't deal with all of your allies. And now, one of the things that you should know about Wilds is that originally they were designed so that they would be kind of used by the AI in these campaign missions. And so they were designed to help teach people the games, basically. So, you would play through the campaign missions ideally, and that would help teach you how to play Shadow Era, essentially, and just give you that kind of thing. They were never designed to be very strong, and that's actually why a lot of them are, or at least used to be, very simple before they were buffed, and not really do much when you play them, and have low stats so that the beginners could beat them when they play against the computer. Now, because they all have really bad stats, it kind of doesn't make sense to play Wild Allies most of the time. They're just generally really bad cards. But this new expansion released Call of the Wild. Now, Call of the Wild turns your wimpy Wild Allies into a real threat. And the reason is, it is a support ability that gives all of your wild cards one attack. In addition, it gives you the ability to draw 2 cards. Now, this is crazy already, but it's also going to discount the next 3 wild allies you summon by 2 resources. So this is just a completely busted card, and the only thing holding it back is the fact that it's kind of restricted to like wild cards, and obviously wild cards suck. So that is kind of the balance here. Call of the Wild is an incredibly strong card, but your wild allies are really bad, and so kind of like this deck kind of figures out how to turn your wimpy wild allies into real killers. And we're going to do that through a lot of different ways. One of them is Augmenting Golem, giving everything 1 health, and you can awaken it to give everything 1 attack. Raikka can effectively give everything 1 attack and 1 damage reduction for a turn. Call of the Wild turns your allies into, again, 1 more attack stronger. So all of these cards are going to boost up your wimpy cards and make them stronger. And there's actually 1 more card that is just insane, and that is going to be Mountain Wolf. Mountain Wolf is really good at basically boosting itself and getting a lot of advantage that way. Okay, so here we go ahead and clear his board somewhat. He still has the Deepwood Bobcat out there, but because of Call of the Wild and because of, well, basically the ability of Treetop Spider, which this card was actually recently buffed. It has Ambush. When it's summoned, it attacks an opposing ally. Now, on 1 attack, that's usually not going to do much, but when you have stuff like Call of the Wild out, that suddenly becomes 2 attack. And then, it could become 3 attack with Augmenting Golem, or 4 attack with Raikka. So, yeah, that's how we were able to kill that, that basically General of Eunaxio. We were able to summon it. It also had haste with Portal, so that is kind of what happened there. Here we're using another card, Ravenscrest. I only run 1 copy in this deck because we aren't a support ability spam deck. I mean, we kind of are, but we really just run like the 4 Call of the Wilds and the 4 portals. So really you just want to play like the 1 portal and then you're good for like 3 turns. And it just lets you draw another card and renew a resource, which is just really nice for just continuing your plays. You do let your opponent seek an ability, but I don't think it's that bad when you're just gonna OTK your opponent. It can be something you don't want to play against priests, and you can just sacrifice it because they can search out Focus Prayer and destroy your portal. But, okay, that is kind of a tangent. Here, I think we're going in for a little bit of a kill turn. So we're going to play our Mountain Wolves, And Mountain Wolf is kind of the win condition of this deck. Mountain Wolf says you have 1 attack for every other friendly wild ally. Now that seems, pretty reasonable. But the thing to know about wilds is that obviously when you have Call of the Wild, you can spam 3 wild allies. So that's just going to give it another 3 attack. And the other thing about Mountain Wolf is that it is something that can get really, really strong with Portal. When you summon it with Portal, all of a sudden you're swinging for 8 here. And we just did 8 to that ally, 3 to the camouflaged foe, 8 to face, and another 3 to face. So you can see how we went from, our opponent went from kind of a full board to no board and only 17 health. And the other thing about this is it's kind of hard for our opponent to kill our stuff. As you can see, Braggart is doing 0 because we have Raikka that protects our own allies as well. So here we go on for another portal, and then we just play Call of the Wild again. So yeah, we're just, doing that. Mountain Wolf again, Wild Boar with haste, Black Adder with haste, and as you can see, everything is going to be boosted by Raikka. And now, we don't even have to play Augmenting Golem because we're just going to wipe our opponent off the map with our Mountain Wolves. So that was kind of an example where, there was some back and forth, but our game plan just kind of went correctly, and we were able to just take that game. So this is a very aggressive deck. You start off slowly, funnily enough, just because your wild allies suck when they're not boosted, but they do really become very, very strong very quickly. I do want to show a game where I lose, so this is one where I go against a Baduru, and I think this is one of the poor matchups for this deck. We really just don't have a way to deal with a, item like that, and so if Baduru brings down their weapon, it kind of sucks for us because we just have to hit it over and over again until the durability is over, and for Baduru to summon that weapon for free, it just gives him so much advantage against us. That said, okay, here I really wish I drew into something that could have dealt with this Harpy. Even Killer Bee would have been fine, but there was Treetop Spider we could have played here. Sadly, we didn't draw into that, so we kind of are off to a poor start in my opinion. We're going to let our opponent kind of kill our Mountain Wolf, sadly, and also damage our Wild Boar. So yeah, that is kind of sad. Okay, so now we draw into our Treetop Spider, which is now when we can play it and actually kill this Harpy. That was a little bit lucky, I would say, but I think it was worth the risk because our opponent had so many cards in hand. Bad Santa was probably the right thing to play there. Here comes the weapon, and that's gonna, really hurt us. So that weapon has 5 durability, now 4 durability. That is going to be really hard for us to handle. But, we've got to do what we've got to do. So here I just am going to play another Call of the Wild, try to draw some more cards. Normally I think it's worth saving Amulet of Conjuring for, when you have, a lot of resources, maybe 6. So, okay, I actually sack it there. I think that was probably a good call because, we draw into another one, but also just because of the fact that, okay, and here we just go for spam and also the 1 damage reduction, just hoping one of these is going to live, and then Slithering Viper comes in and, of course, disables our strongest ally. So, yeah, this is a really tough match here, but what we're going to do is Supernova, so that is going to help a little bit. Okay, I kind of got a little bit distracted there. One thing I think I could have done better in this matchup is not play so many Call of the Wilds early on, because Call of the Wild is probably your strongest card, but playing it just to draw 2 is probably not that good of a usage for Call of the Wild, so maybe I should have held on to those. But yeah. Here, we're just going to use Amulet of Conjuring. Amulet of Conjuring works really, really well with Call of the Wild because what you can do is you can kind of play Amulet of Conjuring, and then on the next turn, you will play Call of the Wild, and then Amulet of Conjuring to draw a total of 5 cards, and some of them are going to be Wild Allies because we just run so many Wild Allies in this deck. Okay. So yeah, here we just never really have our board control, and I think this is kind of where this deck can falter. If you never really establish the board, then you're just going to have a hard time against any player you face because you're kind of coming back from behind there. I guess, with Portal, it's less about the board and more about, yeah, kind of like, I guess, um, yeah, because you can retake the board. It's just harder, even with Portal, to win if your opponent can kind of yeah, navigate that. Okay, but here we go, and we're going ahead and playing everything. One other thing that is not in our favor in this game, I would say, is the fact that we just don't have enough cards left in the deck. And that is obviously one problem with running a 40 card deck. It's that you are eventually going to run out of cards. And I think if we had a thicker deck, that may have helped a little bit here. But obviously, you would be less consistent. So that is also the downside of playing a thicker deck. And yeah. Okay, so here, yeah, we're just kind of out of gas. Normally I would play Amulet of Conjuring, but I don't want to take the damage from drawing too many cards. And so, yeah, here we're just basically going to die to our opponent kind of out-advantaging us and out-resourcing us. And that is one of the things with this deck is you want to win pretty quickly probably, because otherwise you're going to come into this situation where you run out of cards because you draw so many, and you just don't have enough gas to finish off the game. So yeah, what else? I would say though, even though you don't have the best brew matchup, this is still a really, really insane deck. Here I'm just kind of doing some suicide moves. But this is still a really, really strong deck that you're going to see crush a lot of other types of decks. So let's see. What would be a good one to watch? Let's watch this one, I think. Because it's a mage. And so this one can really show off some of the strengths of this deck. I think this was an earlier version when I was still running Uru. I actually sack it first thing. I don't think Uru is that good in this deck just because you really want to be spamming the board, and Uru helps with that, but it's just too expensive. So you might play like Call of the Wild, and then you don't have enough resources left to play your Uru, basically. And so yeah, I guess it's good late game, but not early game. Here, I'm kind of playing this new card called Killer Bee. Killer Bee is really good in some cases, and in some cases it's iffy, but here it was really, really good for me. I was basically able to get rid of his allies, one in after the other, and just prevent our opponent from just getting a little bit too strong. And so that was one of the ways you can kind of survive the early game, I guess. This is also an older version where I'm still running Uldros. I took it out just because I feel like it's kind of overkill. Uldros says that you can pay one Shadow Energy to basically reduce the cost of your wild allies in your hand by one, but I mean, you already reduce the cost of all your wild allies by one anyway when you run Call of the Wild, by two actually, so it's kind of redundant. That said, that is another option in this deck that is like fine. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. It's just probably I figured a little bit less good than I would have liked, so I just took it out. But you can see here, it actually really, is good for us, I think. Because we were able on that last turn to use Wild Boar with Uldros and Portal on turn 5. So here, yeah, we're able. I think our opponent might have wanted to kill that Treetop Spider, but yeah, that is kind of how it goes sometimes. I don't think our opponent is really expecting us to drop our mountain wolves like this. So this is one of the ways where the deck really can just come out swinging. We kind of were behind for most of the game, and now all of a sudden we have this board with so many strong allies. And so yeah, Supernova is coming. That's kind of probably the only way for our opponent to kind of survive this. If they didn't have Supernova there, that would have hurt them. This is another way where actually Uldros is kind of nice. It burns them for 2, but lets them draw a card when they have no allies out. But because we're kind of like a rush deck, I mean, I don't care that much that our opponent draws cards. I mean, we run stuff like Bad Santa anyway. And also, burning for 2 is really good. So Pendant's going to come out and kill our portal. So Obsidian Pendant is a new card. It is something you play for 1 cost, and then you activate its ability for 4 cost. So in total, you're basically paying 5 resources to essentially destroy anything. You can destroy a portal, a support ability, an item, an attachment. So it's a very versatile, but it is a little bit overcosted. So I guess it's an interesting card. It is very good, maybe a little bit too good, but yeah, it is a very good card. And yeah, so we can see now that our opponent is running just some Outlaw Aramia, and this is just a very common deck here. Okay, so yeah, we're just gonna go in, Call of the Wild, and just clear his board with Killer Bee, which is really nice. And then just spam the board with our allies. So Call of the Wild, of course, coming in clutch here, just letting us spam the board, which is great. Okay, so our opponent here with our the Wild or Outlaw strategy. Yeah, so I think here it's just gonna come down to who can burn the opponent faster, because we both have kind of rush decks. We're both running Portal. And so yeah, it's going to come down to who can finish each other off first. Now, given that our opponent is kind of dealing with our board, I think our opponent, rightfully so, because we have such a strong potential to kill. But yeah, has to kind of worry about us doing our thing here. So we're going to go ahead and hit our opponent for a ton of damage. And okay, yeah, actually we don't have Portal out, yeah, because it was removed. Okay, I thought that was going to finish him off, but because we didn't have Portal, we actually have to wait a turn. Now, the reason I actually summon these Mountain Wolves is if our opponent Supernovas us, we have Portal and Cave Spider and Call of the Wild, or just another Supernova, so our opponent can't play Supernova here. They just don't have enough health to. So instead, they're just going to clear our board with all these hasted allies. And yeah, that is, almost enough. Only thing is here, what do I have? I either Supernova or I think I play Portal. Okay, yeah, I just play Supernova here. Okay, actually, this is pretty risky because you saw on last turn, our opponent played what? 7 points of damage, like 12 points of damage. So actually, we are actually kind of lucky that our opponent just didn't kill us here. But I guess they're kind of out of gas by this point after that Supernova. Okay, anyway, okay, and yeah, here's another game where you can actually kind of see how we actually run out of cards again. So that is a thing in this deck. You draw so much that you're probably going to deck out, and you're going to want to kill your opponent before that happens. Okay, so yeah, we are kind of getting kind of long in this video. I'm trying to think if I want to show off any other videos. I mean, you can see that like just the streak this deck did. Raikka is considered like one of the worst heroes, but we still were able to pull off like a 6-game streak, and then win another game on top of that after that. So yeah, I think that was enough from the replays, but I do kind of want to show off the deck itself. So we're playing basically all the 2-cost allies. We're actually only running 2 Cave Spiders because Cave Spider is just so bad. It's just not worth running more. It has 1 attack and 2 health, but That especially in an ability damage meta that we're in right now, stealth is just not good enough, especially on a weak body like this. I guess it's still good for spam, but um, yeah, I usually don't like seeing Cape Spider, so that's why we're only running 2. But we're maxing out on all the other 2-cost Wild allies. Killer Bee is amazing early on, like you saw in that last replay, and it only kills itself if your opponent has allies out. So even if your opponent doesn't have anything out, it's still good to just play a 2/2 for 2 cost. It's still just an amazing card. Treetop Spider is, I would say, probably the best for this deck in terms of the 2 costs because it can attack twice, and you just have so many ways to give your allies attack. Blackadder is really good as a defensive turn 2 play, probably the best one to play going second, and Wild Boar is amazing going first, but has such a low health that your opponent can probably just remove it if you play it going second. So yeah, nothing much to say about the ally lineup. I guess I went with only one Supernova because we are kind of like we just draw so much that if I ever want Supernova, I'm pretty confident I can draw into it. For Mountain Wolf is kind of like the MVP. This is how you're going to close out games generally. It just gets to insane attack values. And yeah, I think this is kind of what makes the deck work. Without Mountain Wolf, you probably don't want to run this because the rest of your allies just suck that much. So yeah, you really need the Mountain Wolf, and I would say you probably never want to sacrifice it unless absolutely necessary. And you probably don't want to play it if it's going to die, but sometimes I felt forced to, just to absorb damage or just like kind of hope for the best. Okay, so we have 4 Bad Santa. This is really good with Call of the Wild because you can Call of the Wild and then Bad Santa and then draw 5 cards in total. And because Call of the Wild makes all of your allies free essentially except for the Mountain Wolf. It just lets you dig for that those allies that you're spamming. So Bad Santa is crucial. Portal is really good. Now, I normally sack this early on, actually, because I know I'm going to draw into another copy. So this is a good card to sack early. Because really, this is kind of like, okay, if things go wrong, you play your Portal. But ideally, like, maybe your opponent has a slow start, or you just get the nut draw, or you just have, like, a bunch of Killer Bees. Ideally, you're going to have board control, and then you don't even need Portal. So that's why I kind of sacrifice it early, and then it's kind of like what I want to draw into if I ever lose the board. Or just want to finish my opponent off, I guess. The one Loom of Fate, because this is kind of like a 5th Bad Santa. You don't want to run too many of these because if you draw into multiple, the second one is dead. So that's why I only run one. The one Augmenting Golem, which just helps all your wild allies that are really wimpy just live a little bit longer. 2 Amulet of Conjurings, like Loom of Fate. The second one is dead if you already have the first one. So, but it's just such a good draw engine that I guess I run 2 anyway. And then the one Ravenscrest. I guess if I were going to improve this deck, I could probably, like, I don't know, remove a Cave Spider maybe, or maybe remove an Amulet of Conjuring. Or maybe even I would put in, like, one more Cave Spider. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I deck out, like, a little bit too much. I ideally want, like, maybe that, like, one extra point of damage or one extra card in the deck is going to make the difference between usually decking out and maybe finishing off the game before I deck out. So yeah. But again, you do want this deck to be kind of consistent, so that is kind of the trade-off. Do you really go higher because of not wanting to deck out, or do you kind of stay at 40 cards because you want to draw into, like, the right 2-cost ally when you need it? Okay, well, this video is probably getting a little bit too long, so I'm probably going to call it there. If you're still watching this, thank you for watching to the end, and yeah, I'm going to make more videos like this, so consider subscribing if you enjoy this content. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.